Out of all the men I have met, I have never seen anyone worse than my husband, Ryan. He was truly the worst man, I think. Especially shocking was his remark when he found out I was pregnant.
Oh no.
I wish it were Katie's child. Right in front of the new life growing in my belly, Ryan carelessly slipped that comment. That sparked his absurd excuses. And eventually, he pushed for a divorce. My name is Megan Anderson. I am a 40-year-old homemaker. Being able to become a homemaker and achieve this calm life was thanks to Eric, who remarried me. Originally, I had a husband with whom I had shared 2 years of marriage. His name was Ryan, and he was the manager of a cafe I often visited. Ryan, who remembered me from my frequent visits, approached me, and our relationship developed. While we were dating, he seemed like any other man, and I didn't have a bad impression of him. Ryan and I were the same age, and we got along well. Then, after 3 years of dating, we tied the knot. I became a married woman, and simultaneously, Ryan changed his job to a trading company. Ryan earned more than when he was a cafe manager. However, his attitude changed 180 degrees after we got married. Thanks for your hard work this month. I'd like to go pay the rent tomorrow, could I have the money? After marrying him, at his request, I became a homemaker. My job was household chores and managing the finances. Every month, I would receive his pay slip and allocate it to the budget for that month. At first, I thought living on just his salary would be tough as a homemaker. But it turned out to be manageable. However, even though I managed the money, he wouldn't entrust me with the bank card. So I always had to ask verbally. When I asked for the money needed for rent, Ryan showed a displeased face. You know, you've got it good. Just do housework and stay in this house. Saying that, he handed me an envelope with the bank's logo, which seemed freshly withdrawn. Should I get a job then? What about all the housework? I never thought the very person who asked me to be a homemaker would criticize me for it. But I guess there must be some stress from working at a company. There are many men who can only complain at home. I accepted that aspect of his personality as his weakness and tried to interact with him with a smile. But now, I think back on the kindness I showed him, and it makes me incredibly upset. Our married life with him had its moments of misunderstanding. But it was more peaceful than I had expected. There was no sudden financial hardship. I could receive a small allowance, and though we were not wealthy, we were living adequately. However, on our 6-month anniversary, Ryan did not come home. Hey. Today is our anniversary. What time do you think you'll be home? Even after sending messages through the app, they remained unread. Time passed, and before I knew it, it was past midnight. The meal I had prepared with extra care had completely cooled. And I eventually reached my limit of sleepiness. The next day, when I went to the living room, the side dishes that should have been wrapped and left on the table were in the trash. What? You came home? And what is this? This is awful. I held a sad feeling and headed to Ryan's bedroom. There he was, still in his suit, collapsed on the bed. Ryan, wake up. As I shook him and called out to him, after a while, he woke up. What? You're annoying. Though he was clearly in a bad mood, I decided to ask him anyway. The food I left on the table. Why did you throw it away? Huh? I don't remember. I came back drunk. Let me sleep. Saying that, he brushed off my hand and fell back into a deep sleep. Seeing him like that, I suddenly felt emptiness. Moreover, at that time, there was something I hadn't yet told him. I had planned to reveal it during our half-anniversary celebration, but I couldn't even talk about it. I deeply understood. Our marital relationship was cooling off bit by bit. One day, After Ryan had been sleeping all day while I did the housework, he finally woke up in the evening. I told him that I had something important to discuss. What is it about? I want to play some games. When I started a serious conversation, he clearly looked displeased. It was disheartening for me to speak to him like this, but I couldn't give up here. Listen, I missed my period last month and it still hasn't come. When I said that, Ryan stopped moving and looked at me, muttering. What? That's what it means. Did you take a test? Did you? Of course. It was positive. We're finally having a baby. As I talked, I found myself smiling. This child was something I had long desired. Living in this house without Ryan, spending my days monotonously alone was hollow. If I could raise a child, play with them, the possibilities seemed endless. However, his response was not what I had hoped for. Don't joke with me. Getting pregnant. What are we going to do now? Ryan, don't you want a child? This time, it was my turn to be stunned. Too surprised, a smile on my face froze, and my heart seemed to jump out of my mouth from anxiety. I must be making a foolish face now. Let's think about children when you get pregnant. Ryan had said that, and I had always assumed that he wanted children too. But reality seemed not so simple. A child born from you would never be cute. Wait, what? As I faltered, struggling to find words, he continued.
Oh no.
I wish it were Katie's child. Oops. Ryan covered his mouth suddenly, but of course, I didn't miss it. Wait, what do you mean? I fully realized Ryan's slip-up. Wait, don't tell me, are you cheating? He averted his eyes. Hey. I couldn't help but shout in anger, causing him to flinch for a moment. Then he said, I don't love you anymore. Honestly, being a homemaker isn't appealing. I felt a surge of intense shock and anger. The very person who had asked me to be this unappealing homemaker was none other than Ryan himself. So, it would have been better if I had continued working, right? I was prepared to give up my career and become your wife. Are you trampling over that?
Ugh.
It's so annoying how you always pick at things. Then, there was no need for me to become a homemaker. I could hardly keep my composure between anger and sorrow. Yet Ryan responded indifferently, which hurt even more. If you hadn't become a homemaker, what would have happened to the household? I get stressed when the house is dirty. It was all too chaotic. We continued to exchange words, but there was no emotional connection. It was likely that nothing I said would get through. But still, I desperately responded. Your heart is the dirtiest thing right now. Then he casually and selfishly concluded. If you think so, let's get divorced quickly. It makes the conversation easier. I was finally at a loss for words. Ryan pressed further. I won't give you child support. I don't have that kind of money. So, having the baby is up to you. Can people really be this cruel? There's a limit to heartlessness. At least, including the time we were dating, we had been together for over 4 years. Where did I go wrong? I thought I had been doing my best to be by his side. But perhaps he was just fickle. A person who wouldn't appreciate the ordinariness of everyday life. But it was too late to say anything now. After the conversation, Ryan left and returned efficiently with the divorce papers already filled out on his side. As I silently stared at them, he told me to sign as well. Ryan was serious. I thought, today, is this the end of our marriage? That's what I thought as I signed. Watching Ryan, who observed my actions expressionlessly, I sped up my pen. Thus, my status changed to a divorced pregnant woman that very day. After the divorce, I faced harsh days. I had about $5,000 left in savings. This was the money I managed to secure through property division. Naturally, there was hardly any savings left. Because Ryan had been wasting money without my knowledge. I had confronted him about the affair, but he never confessed the truth. I couldn't afford to hire a detective or a lawyer. My mental condition couldn't keep up with such actions. It was quicker to cut off the root of evil. That's what I told myself as the reason for the divorce. With only $5,000 in savings, it was uncertain if it would last a month. Finding a new home, paying initial costs, buying necessities, and looking for a job. Every day felt like hell. But gradually, I started to see positive results. I was thankful that I found a job quickly. It was a receptionist position at a high-rise condo. Being able to speak Spanish, I was hired immediately. I found a new place, moved, and managed to save about $500. Still, life was just barely manageable. Although I was lucky to find a job, I had a baby inside me. The uncertainty of how long I could work loomed over me. However, during this time, I met someone. He would become my new husband, Eric. We had a lot to talk about. Naturally, because I was on reception duty. Excuse me, how do I get to the bulky waste disposal area? Again? I couldn't help but laugh. He had just moved in and didn't understand the layout of the building at all. Go down to the second basement and proceed to the right. The door at the very end to the left is the entrance. Thank you very much all the time. It's my first time in a high-rise condo, but it's like a maze. After my explanation, he smiled sheepishly. His smile was pure, and his sincerity was evident from his demeanor. We talked a lot outside of work too, and 3 months into my job, he asked me out. But I'm divorced, you know? And I'm pregnant. Indeed, Eric was attractive to me. According to him, he is the president of a major electronics manufacturer. He handles parts for elevators installed in this high-rise condo. In addition to manufacturing TVs and air conditioners. However, I felt it was nice how he didn't boast about it. But that wasn't the only good thing about him. Having children is great. Actually, I am also divorced. What? I couldn't help but exclaim. He explained to me. I am infertile. That's why my previous wife left me. I see. But even if we were to get married in the future, the child would be someone else's. Could you love them? I felt I had asked him a serious question. This was worse than a corporate stress interview. But he answered me without hesitation. There's no reason I couldn't love your child. Hearing those words, I suddenly collapsed to my knees. His name is Eric Thompson. A 43-year-old president of a major corporation, 3 years my senior. Someone from such a different world, wanting to pick someone like me. Honestly, I was afraid to believe it. It almost felt like some kind of prank. But when I looked into his eyes, I understood everything. His gaze was straight and pure. There was absolutely no deceit in his eyes. He was looking only at me. Though baseless, if Eric was to be my husband, I felt he would surely cherish me. Or perhaps, like Ryan, he might change too. I struggled internally with whether I could trust Eric until the very end. Yet strangely, I felt a comfort with him that I had never experienced before. I decided to stop overthinking and took the hand he offered. Thus, I started dating him, and 2 months later, we got remarried. Not long ago, I could never have anticipated remarrying so quickly. But remarriage wasn't the end goal. Because my delivery was approaching. As the due date neared, my health deteriorated. Ow, my stomach hurts. When we remarried, I had to leave the newly contracted apartment immediately. But he covered all the penalty fees and moving costs, and now I live with him on the top floor of the high-rise condo. Eric, whom I had thought to be a bit clueless, actually lived on the top floor of the high-rise condo. When I found it out, I doubted whether he really should be remarrying someone like me. Nevertheless, when I said my stomach hurt, he panicked but supported me, saying, "Are you okay? What do you need?" Despite his cool appearance, I began to see his flustered side. Thanks to his support, I was able to safely give birth to our daughter. However, a major problem arose. The doctor told us something unexpected. "Mr. Thompson, please listen carefully, your daughter has almost no vision." What? We, the couple, were stunned by the doctor's words and froze, looking at each other. We couldn't accept reality. The doctor continued with a sympathetic look. "She won't be blind, but her vision will be very weak." Although we were initially confused by the doctor's words, there was no fault of the child who had just been born. There was, of course, no option to abandon her because she couldn't see. We named our daughter Nicole, grateful that she came into this world. Since then, Nicole grew up without any problems other than her visual impairment. And she just celebrated her 9th birthday. "Eric, did you find what you were looking for?" Today, we were supposed to go shopping for Nicole's birthday present together. "Sorry, you two go ahead to the store. I'll catch up," he told me, and I left the house with Nicole. "Mommy, is Daddy coming?" "He'll come along later, don't worry." Nicole, whose vision is dim, gripped my hand tightly as we walked. As I guided her through the streets, telling her about our surroundings, someone suddenly spoke to me. "Is that you, Megan?" As I turned towards the voice, there stood Ryan, my ex-husband who had left me 10 years ago. "Ryan, what are you doing in such a fancy residential area? It doesn't matter to you." Suddenly, I became aware of my shallow breathing. I couldn't breathe properly. Sensing my condition, Nicole spoke up. "Mommy? Who are you talking to?" "Nicole, be quiet for a bit." As I tried to calm my daughter, my ex-husband reacted. "Oh, is this the child that was born? Wait, why are her eyes closed all the time? That's none of your business." As I responded, he paused for a moment then mockingly retorted. Can't she see? The child is as defective as her mother." Then he started laughing out loud, and passers-by looked at him with puzzled expressions. I felt embarrassed to be in such a situation. I regretted involving my daughter. This man would always make me feel miserable, I thought. When suddenly someone called out from behind. "Megan, Nicole, what's wrong?" Turning around, there stood Eric. At the same time, seeing Eric made Ryan, who had been berating me just moments ago, started to tremble. "Sir, President." At his words, I couldn't believe my ears. Eric then asked him, "Weren't you Mr. Irving who came for an interview the day before yesterday? What are you doing here?" Being usually around Eric, I could tell. His voice was clearly displeased. To others, it might sound like a normal question. But my ears weren't deceived. Ryan was visibly shaken by Eric's words. Well, I was thinking about moving around here. After getting the job offer from your company." I see. "So, do you think you can get into our company?" It looked more like an interrogation than a conversation. Every time he spoke, Ryan became more flustered. It was hard to believe the attitude he had shown to my daughter and me just a moment ago. "I think the interview went well," he muttered weakly, lacking confidence. Watching them, I could piece together the situation. Ryan had an interview for a mid-career position at Eric's company, and was now waiting for the results. It seemed Eric himself was part of the interview panel. When Ryan honestly shared his impressions of the interview, Eric's face was smiling, but his eyes were cold. After a pause, Eric looked straight at Ryan and began to speak. Do you think someone would want to employ a man in their company who speaks ill of his own wife and child? From Eric's statement, I realized that our entire conversation had been overheard. Your wife and child? What? Ryan was shocked and immobilized by the revelation. However, Eric didn't stop pressing. Why are you surprised? I've been hearing about your past with Megan. I had no idea that it was someone applying to my company, though. As Eric said this, Ryan was at a loss for words. He seemed to want to say something, his mouth twitched, but no sound came out. Moreover, I noticed countless beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Well, Ryan was completely cornered. In this situation, he had no chance against Eric. Eric's momentum was unstoppable. You insulting my wife and child is like insulting me. I can forgive someone who insults me, but I will never forgive someone who speaks ill of my precious family. Ryan let out a voiceless sound and froze with his mouth open. For now, you're not hired. There's no need even to discuss it with HR. Eric coldly delivered the verdict, and Ryan collapsed on the spot. He then began to speak in a half-hearted voice, unclear if it was to himself or for us to hear. I broke off an engagement and bragged to everyone around me to join this company. I even just bought a car. And to think I'd fail the interview over a single insult. Seeing his attitude, I realized Ryan still didn't think he was at fault. But Eric felt the same way and mercilessly told him off. The fact that you don't understand the gravity of that a single crime shows you understand nothing. Please, disappear forever from our presence. The gentle demeanor Eric usually showed me was gone. He now seemed like a majestic lion protecting his pack alone, while he was usually innocent and careless. At the same time, I felt proud of his stance and was reassured that I had married this man. Please, never appear before us again, as Eric says. Ryan gave no response. Seeing this, Eric raised his voice a bit and shouted. Response. Then Ryan replied with a frightened voice. Yes. My daughter, who sensed the situation through voices alone, clung to me. But for once I was glad her vision was poor. There was no way I could let my growing daughter see such a debacle. After being rebuked by us, Ryan walked away with a defeated expression, emanating a despairing aura. I felt no sympathy at all. Because of that man, I had suffered a lot. Honestly, I even felt he should suffer more. Though Ryan's sudden appearance caused a disturbance, once it was over, Eric returned to his usual calm self. Eric, thank you. I just did what anyone would do. He responded with a smile to my thanks. However,
Oh no.
I left my wallet. As usual, he made a clumsy mistake and went back home. I couldn't help but laugh at him. But I knew that, with him, life would surely be enjoyable from now on.